What's up, everyone? Train Freak here, and wait, that's not my name. Where did that accent come from? It can't get out of my way! Dang! Yee! That was Sadie. Okay, let's get back up here to the setup and script. Anyway, let's get into this discussion. I'll leave that in. She was laying down over there. I started the video and she gets up and walks right across. Except on the keyboard. Had a bunch of spaces. This is going to be layout discussion, episode 1. I am going to be doing a few episodes talking about the layouts that are to be built that are not built yet. As you can see, it's now dusk behind me. This is filmed the same day as episodes 2 and 3. Sparky just finished, so I should have enough time to film this. We'll start off with the first deck. The Finger Lakes Northern came out of a desire to model the steel industry, but fit within the prototypical railroads of Conrail, Norfolk Southern, CSX, etc. in this area. It was originally intended to run from Lake Ontario to Canandaigua with the steel mill in Victor. It is pretty much fictional, but has become a little more prototypical as the fictional map and history changed. It is designed as a high-traffic, extremely busy, and profitable Class II railroad serving the Finger Lakes region of New York, interchanging with various railroads through the years. The FLN is 100% freelance railroad, but they got its start in the 19th century, formed in 1895 as a terminal railroad owned by New York Central, PR, Pennsylvania, Lehigh Valley, Erie, and Lackawanna, serving the steel mill and a couple other industries around the main yard to settle a service dispute. In 1900, their trackage was increased to serve a brewery built in Cheshire, outside of Canandaigua. The railroad at this time had its own crews, but used locomotives of the parent railroads, with the oldest and most worn locomotives being assigned to switchers. 4 years later, the FLN built their own steam shop on the PRR trackage at Canandaigua Yard to service the steam locomotives assigned to them and parent locomotives that are near the area. In the following years, the interchange was worked out to provide the most fluid operation possible. The NYC reduced the interchange ops with FLN to only Macedon, while Erie, DL&W, and PRR interchanged within Canandaigua, and Lehigh Valley interchanged in Farmington, while the FLN began operating the LV NYC branch that was built to interchange with FLN. Of course, all these lines are pretty much fictional. I mean, the PRR Elmira branch does come into here at some point. Grain for the brewery and ore for the mill would have predominantly come from the New York Central, while coal would most likely come from PRR. Steel and beer went to every railroad. In 1931, the FLN began buying their own locomotives instead of relying on the power loan from parent railroads. But these were cheap locomotives, destined for scrap, old and tired locomotives that did not perform well and couldn't handle the traffic increase that came with World War II. In 1960, the FLN parents DL&W and Erie merged, and thus the FLN became partly owned by the public and local businesses, so the Erie-Lackawanna would not own 40% of the company. The railroad became 20% owned by Rochester Steel in 1968 when the NYC and PRR formed Penn Central. By this time, the steam was all gone, replaced by diesels, both owned by FLN and its parent roads. In 1976, the three parents merged to form Conrail, and the entire company became publicly traded. Also, Baltimore, Ohio started operating over the former Penn Central from Rochester and Macedon, and the Delaware and Hudson running up the Erie EL trackage in the southern tier. The D&H was recent addition. I just recently added that because the D&H was really given trackage rights over Conrail, and so they made more sense than the B&O, but I wanted to do a little bit of B&O, so I got both of them, both the other area railroads in there, which wouldn't have, if the FLN actually existed, they wouldn't actually interchange with them because their tracks weren't close enough to them. But you give B&O trackage rights on what's now CSX from Rochester to Macedon, and then the D&H come up from the southern tier, and you get it. You get it there. This would bring a lot of variety to local rail fans, as Chessie System owned B&O used C&O and WM locomotives as well in chassis paint, and D&H was owned by N&W, which meant not only would D&H 4-axle power appear in Canandaigua, but occasionally their trains would feature Norfolk and Western 6-axle power. Then eventually Guilford power from Boston and Maine, Springfield Terminal, and Maine Central would appear on trains, becoming more regular starting in 1984 when GTI gained control of the D&H and N&W. But N&W and NS Power, along with Little Southern, would still show up. These are all based off of photos I have looked through on Railroad Pictures archives of trains in Conklin Yard, which was the East Binghamton Yard of Delaware and Hudson, then Canadian Pacific. Now it's Norfolk. Now it's the main Norfolk Southern Yard, and Binghamton Yard is kind of, yeah. In 1991, CP purchased the D&H, which will bring CP and SUI units into interchange traffic from the south until 1998. So this part of the layout will be an independent layout, which will share some locomotives and rolling stock with the prototypical part, but won't have a physical connection. The primary industries will be the Rochester Steel Corp, a blast furnace steel mill that will be approximately 64 feet long and 2.5 feet deep, and the Cheshire Brewing Company, which will become Pawtucket Brewery West at some point as a nod to Family Guy. There will be multiple industries on the Manchester branch, one of which might end up being a cement plant. There will also be lumber, propane, etc. type industries, including Bailey's softwood distributors. Fruit fly, get out of my face. Through the years from 1980 to present, and feature the Finger Lakes Northern interchange with Conrail, Baltimore, Ohio, Rochester and Southern, Delaware and Hudson, CSX, Ontario Central, Finger Lakes Railway, Bath and Hammondsport. Primary power will be SD40-2, SD45, and SD45-2 locomotives with some switchers and GP units, along with some Elcos, SD35s, and others. Also, the FLN will purchase former bicentennial units that aren't currently working or wrecked, and restore them to bicentennial paint. One of these will be the Sioux bicentennial unit. This will be a high-traffic railroad with plenty to do. Just the steel mill alone will account for the movement of approximately 1,000 cars per operating session. The FLN will run from the staging yard in Macedon, New York, site of Conrail, B&O, RSR interchange, south to Farmington Yard, the main classification yard. The main will continue to the Victor and Manchester branches. The Manchester branch will serve various industries, being about 35 feet long, while the Victor branch will be the 64-foot-long steel mill and 30-foot-long steel mill yard. The main will then enter Canandaigua, which will be the interchange point for Southern and Conrail trains, D&H until 1998, and FGLK after 1998. I think it was 1998 that the FGLK took over in Canandaigua. I have to check that date, but I think that was when they were formed. The main will then pass through Cheshire by the brewery and connect with fictional DOW Erie trackage to run to Atlanta, North Cohocton, where the line ends at the Bath and Hammondsport interchange. This will be a good opportunity to model like an abandoned rail line, like newer ballast put over an old track connecting the FLN trackage that would have been built down from Canandaigua parallel, and then over to the, and it will give me an opportunity to have some overgrown track, maybe an overgrown siding from when it was the DL&W Erie trackage. And stuff like that. Maybe some old mile markers. It's a good opportunity to kind of create a little showing past scene there. Maybe rails ripped up and ties still in the scenery. Stuff like that. I have lost my place. Prior to the BHRC taking over the former DL&W, this end of the line will be an interchange with Conrail, which will handle smaller interchange traffic. Multiple trains will run on the line to serve the steel mill, brewery, and other industries, as well as interchange with the various railroads through the years. Locomotives from Conrail, B&O, RSR, D&H, N&W, Southern, NS, CSX, B&M, MEC, Springfield Terminal. More will be able to be seen moving about at both ends of the line, as well as in Farmington and Canandaigua yards, as interchange traffic is moved about. This deck will be set at a coffee table height, allowing operators to be seated and still have a good view of their trains and other movement. Unfortunately, this reduces space for under layout storage, but that won't be an issue until enough rolling stock is acquired to operate really fully realistically. Of course, this plan will drastically change if I ever win the lottery. If that ever happens, the FLN will become 2-deck, and the prototypical layout will be ripped out from above it and built at another location that I've had my eye on for years. The footprint will be 40 by 25 feet and will wrap around along with having 2 peninsulas. Rolling stock for realistic operations. Will have to be about 2,000 cars and 100 locomotives, approximately a fifth of the total needed for the whole project. The entire layout, including the 3 prototypical decks, will occupy a barn. However, the barn was let go by the previous owners. It needs an almost total foundation replacement. A beam under the first floor is broken in 2, which has to be replaced. The roof needs a total replacement, including rafter repair. After that, the junk left in the barn has to be gone through and do not come across here, Sadie. And either thrown out or cleaned up and sold. The dampness needs to dry out. Years of holes in the roof have caused severe damage to the drywall and insulation put in by the previous owners, which all has to be ripped out and the barn left to dry. Once the barn dries out, the floors need to be checked to see what isn't structurally sound and needs replacement. Then it has to be rewired, heat installed, it has to be insulated, have drywall hung as well as a ceiling put in and 2 walls down the peninsulas to support the ceiling. This is all going to take a few years. Plus, bats have to be removed from the second floor. There are about a dozen bats living up there, which also means the floor that isn't replaced has to be cleaned well, sanded, and possibly painted to remove the odor of bat guano. It's a lot of work and a lot of money, but it's all doable eventually. The barn is not in danger of collapsing in its current state, and it's safe to be in for the most part, but not suited right now to start the big layout. I will update as each thing happens. I don't know if the roof or foundation will be first. Stop it, Sadie. The front foundation is a serious issue right now, and one side is becoming a problem. So this layout is a long ways off, even farther than I had planned, as more things have been found wrong. I will do more videos talking about the plans for it, but they will not be regular, as there is no point in talking about it weekly when it will be a few years before I will be close to starting. That and more. That concludes this video. Stay tuned for future videos of Real Trains, another layout, the Real Railroad series, and more as I upload them. If you want to contribute to the channel and the rolling stock of the layouts I will be building, you can via my wish list. Links will be in the description. I do ask that if you want to spend the money on a locomotive for me, that you wait until I have a working programming track at least, which will be soon, hopefully. The programming track will be in my workshop, which is in the house and not affected by the problems with the barn. I am looking through a notebook here I found the original plans for the Binghamton and Western, but yeah, this shows it. That is basically what it will look like. As you can see, the stairs are here. You come in and I'm not quite sure what Wellsburg is. That's an old plan. I'm not going to include the Ithaca branch anymore. The locations have been changed. I'm not doing it that way, but that's the double peninsulas and stuff. It's like 3 feet. It's not drawn equally, but it's going to be 3 feet aisles here, here, and here. At least 3 feet up here, maybe 4 feet.